Every business claims to be data-driven. Cool. So is my toaster.
I love that line. It's a little cynical to start with, but let's be honest, it's so accurate.
It just cuts right through all the corporate buzzwords, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That quote comes from the source material we're digging into today, which is all about the philosophy of William Rochelle, or Bill as he prefers.
Yeah, and right off the bat, I think we need to be clear about who we're talking about here. This isn't, your standard MBA textbook management theory for a nice, calm, steady corporation.
No, not at all.
No. Bill is what you'd call a rebuilder. He's the person they bring in when that steady state has completely collapsed.
So he specializes in organizations that are just in chaos.
Exactly. Companies losing money, losing their best people, and maybe worst of all, they've just completely lost the plot when it comes to their own day-to-day operations.
So we're not talking about just maintaining a well-oiled machine. This is someone who walks into a building that's already on fire and has to find the exits.
Right, and his whole argument, the thing that makes him a real thought leader, is that you can't put out the fire if you can't even see where it's starting.
And that gets to his central idea, visibility.
It does, but he uses that word very differently than most executives. For him, visibility isn't what you think it is.
Usually when I hear visibility in a corporate setting, it just means I want more reports. Someone upstairs wants another spreadsheet by Friday.
And that's the toaster point. Your toaster has data, it knows the heat setting, it knows the timer, it has visibility, but it doesn't make any strategic decisions, right?
Right.
Bill argues that most broken companies are just drowning in reports, but they're absolutely starving for actual insight.
He makes a distinction there that I think is so important for anyone in a leadership role. The difference between having numbers and actually using numbers.
He calls unexamined data souvenirs, which is a great image. Yeah. You collect them, you stick them on a server somewhere, maybe you paste a chart into a slide deck to look good in a meeting. But you never actually use them to change what you're doing. They're just artifacts.
Which sets up, I think, his main analogy for leadership, especially in one of these turnaround situations.
The GPS.
Data's the GPS. People still drive.
It sounds so simple on the surface, but all the nuance is in that implication. I mean, if you're driving your car and the GPS is screaming, turn left, now W, and you ignore it and drive right off a cliff.
The GPS didn't fail.
The GPS worked perfectly, the technology was flawless, the driver failed.
But in the business world, when a project goes off a cliff, what's the first thing everyone blames? The data. The numbers were wrong, or we didn't have the right report.
And Bill's philosophy just flips that on its head. He says companies are always blaming their tools when what they really have is a driver problem. They've got leaders who either refuse to look at the screen, or maybe even worse, they're staring at the wrong screen completely.
This is where he really goes after the whole modern corporate obsession with reporting as a job. He makes this clean break between running reports and working with data.
Which is really the difference between just being an administrator and being a strategist. Running reports is passive. It's, exporting a spreadsheet, fixing the fonts, emailing it out. Bill calls that busy work wearing a tie.
It feels like work, though. You're busy, you feel productive, you're tired at the end of the day, but you haven't actually moved the needle on anything.
Because you haven't interpreted a single thing. Working with data in Bill's world is aggressive. It's interrogating the numbers. It's asking, why is this down? What happened in the last 24 hours? Is this a blip or is this a trend?
So if you're not challenging the data, you're not leading.
You're just a librarian for spreadsheets.
And that librarian mindset, that creates one of the biggest symptoms of a failing company. The thing we all dread, the meeting culture.
Oh, he has a great name for it. The group project with no grade.
That hits home. We have all been there. You're in a conference room, there's like 12 people, one giant screen, and everyone's squinting at cell C14 on some Excel sheet, arguing about what that number even means.
Bill sees that specific scenario not just as an annoyance, but as a total operational failure. He says if you're spending 8 hours a day in meetings, you're spending 8 hours talking about the business instead of running the business.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second. In a turnaround, when everything is chaotic, don't you need more meetings to get everyone on the same page? Yeah. If the building's on fire, shouldn't you have a huddle?
You need alignment, yes. But Bill's point is that most of those meetings are just patches for bad visibility. You're calling a meeting because you don't know the truth. You have to ask 3 different people just to find out where your inventory is.
Yeah.
If you knew the truth, if the data was clear and present and everyone trusted it, you wouldn't need the meeting to find out what's going on. You'd just fix the problem.
So the goal isn't just fewer meetings to save time. It's fewer meetings because the answers are already right in front of you.
He calls it the dream. You walk in Monday morning. You don't wait for a status update. You don't wait for a PowerPoint. You look at a dashboard that is live, accurate, and standardized for everyone. You see the red flag immediately. You go talk to that team, you fix the issue, and you move on.
No conference room required.
None.
But that requires a pretty huge shift in how companies actually build their systems. This gets us to what he calls the Monday morning problem.
This is really the technical backbone of his whole philosophy. The old way, the way that leads to chaos, it all depends on a human. Let's call him Steve.
Poor Steve.
Poor Steve stays late every Sunday night, running exports from 3 different old systems, trying to stitch them together in Excel, fixing all the errors, and then emailing it out to the exec team.
So the entire strategy of a multi-million-dollar company hinges on Steve not making a copy-paste error at 11 o'clock on a Sunday night.
And on the data not being totally out of date by the time you actually read it on Monday morning. That's souvenir data. It's just a snapshot of the past. Bill insists on what he calls living systems.
Which means it has to be automated.
It means no human hands touch the raw data. The tools, whether it's Tableau or Power BI, whatever, they pull directly from the source systems. The Monday morning problem just vanishes because the data is always live.
And this touches on another really key concept in his work, standardized definitions. Because even if you automate the report, you're still in trouble if nobody agrees on what the numbers actually mean.
That's the psychological part of the living system. If your sales team defines revenue as booked orders, but finance defines it as cash in the bank, you'll waste the first 20 minutes of every meeting just arguing about who's right.
A living system forces you to have that argument once.
And only once. After that, the argument is over. The number is the number. It creates a single source of truth.
Which, in a turnaround, that's got to be the only asset that really matters. You can't fix a company if everyone is working from a different set of facts.
You just can't.
So let's talk about the tools for a second. Bill often talks about moving away from Excel towards these big dashboarding tools, but isn't that a little harsh? I mean, Excel is the standard for a reason.
He actually agrees with you. He's not some anti-Excel purist. He calls Excel the proving ground.
A proving ground. Okay, what's the distinction there?
He uses this lighting analogy that I find really, really useful. He calls Excel the flashlight.
A flashlight is good. It's focused. It's intense.
Exactly. High intensity, but very low scope. If you have one specific dark corner, like, say, a weird variance in shipping costs in one region, you get out the flashlight. You dig into the rows, the columns, until, as he puts it, the data confesses.
Until it confesses. I love that image.
But you can't drive a car at 60 miles an hour down the highway using just a flashlight.
You'd crash. You wouldn't see the curve in the road ahead.
Precisely. To run a company at scale, especially one in chaos that's moving fast, you need headlights. You need a system that illuminates the whole road ahead of you wide angle, all at once. That's the automated dashboard.
So the dashboard is the headlights. It shows you the pothole. And when you see the pothole, then you get out the flashlight to see how deep it is.
That's it, exactly. The mistake leaders make is they try to navigate with the flashlight, getting totally bogged down in row-level detail and missing the big picture. Or they try to analyze a complex problem with the headlights, which are just too broad.
And Bill's expertise is knowing which tool to use and when.
Yes.
Okay, so let's pivot to the who in this whole equation. We're talking about automated dashboards, living systems. The natural question from anyone listening is going to be, great, so the algorithm just runs the company now. Does this replace the manager?
He tackles this head on, and he uses what I think is maybe his most important analogy to do it. He says, anomaly detection is the smoke alarm.
Okay, walk me through that.
A good automated system is a smoke alarm. It can detect patterns way faster and more reliably than any human. It creates a beep when sales drop 10% below the average. It alerts you when customer returns spike. It's purely objective. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't have a bad day.
But a smoke alarm doesn't tell you what is burning.
Right. It could be a raging electrical fire inside the walls, or you just burnt your coast. The system cannot tell the difference. All it knows is smoke.
And that's where the leader has to step in to check the kitchen.
The leader provides the context. The AI sees the number drop. The leader knows that, oh, a competitor just launched a big promo, or the website was down for an hour for maintenance, or there's a blizzard hitting the Northeast and it's affecting shipping.
So the machine gives you the what. The human provides the why.
Exactly. Bill isn't advocating for some kind of corporate autopilot. He's advocating for a system that wakes you up so you can actually do your job. It removes the monitoring burden from the human. You don't have to stare at the wall waiting for a fire. The system watches the wall for you. You get to focus on the investigation and, more importantly, the action.
So let's say the alarm goes off. You're looking at the dashboard, the headlights. How do you even begin to interpret what you're seeing? Bill breaks this down into three simple buckets of performance.
And this is a framework that I think every listener should just mentally apply to their own team, like right now. It simplifies all the chaos. The buckets are success, stagnation, and failure.
Success seems pretty obvious. The lines are going up and to the right. Everyone's happy.
Sure. Stagnation, though, is a bit trickier. That's the flat line. It's that we're fine energy. But in a turnaround situation, fine usually just means dying slowly. If you're not growing or getting more efficient, you're probably losing ground to your competitors or just inflation.
Okay, but the third bucket, this is the one that really stood out to me as a unique insight for turnarounds. He doesn't just talk about failure like some catastrophic crash. He talks about slow drift.
This is the silent killer of so many organizations. Slow drift is when a team adapts to bad outcomes and just starts treating them as if they're normal.
Can you give us a concrete example of what that actually looks like?
Sure. Imagine your standard shipping time is 2 days. That's the promise. 1 month, because of some supply chain snag, it slips to 2.5 days. Nobody really panics. It's a small slip.
It's barely noticeable.
Right. Then the next month, it creates a bit of a backlog and it slips to 2.8 days. The team says, well, that's basically the same as last month. They have psychologically reset what the baseline is.
And 6 months later, you're at 4 days.
And customers are canceling, and the team is telling you, hey, we're holding steady at 4 days.
They've normalized the failure.
They've completely gaslit themselves. And because it happens so slowly, nobody ever pulled the fire alarm. This is why Bill is so obsessed with standardized real-time data. If you have a clear, objective definition of success locked into the system, if that dashboard turns bright red the second you hit 2.1 days, that drift becomes visible immediately.
You can't hide from the trend line.
You can't. It forces a confrontation. And in a company that's struggling, you absolutely need that confrontation. You cannot fix what you're willing to tolerate.
So this all brings us to the bottom line, right?
Yeah.
Why does all of this actually matter beyond just, better profits or more efficiency? What's the human impact of this philosophy?
It matters because of the human cost of chaos. Bill isn't just fixing spreadsheets. He's trying to save organizations. When a company fails, people lose their livelihoods. Teams get broken up. Customers are left high and dry.
It totally changes the emotional weather of an office, doesn't it?
Yeah, completely. I mean, think about what it feels like to work in a company where you lead by vibes or by just guessing. Everyone is anxious. Did we have a good month? I don't know. The boss seems kind of mad today. Is my job safe? I'm not sure. I heard some rumors.
It's just a constant high-stress environment because nobody really knows the score.
Right. But when you lead with visibility, you empower people.
Yeah.
You're giving them a scoreboard. If a team knows exactly what their target is and they can see in real time how they're tracking against it, that creates a sense of psychological safety.
It shifts the conversation from, I think you're doing a bad job, to, hey, the number is red. How do we fix this together?
It depersonalizes the problem. It allows the leader to actually support their team instead of just judging them. And that is the core of Bill's message. When leadership uses data correctly, as a GPS, not as a weapon, the people doing the work finally get the support they deserve. They stop being victims of just random gut feel decision-making.
It sounds so strict on the surface, but it's actually incredibly supportive.
Clarity is kindness. In a turnaround, ambiguity is the real enemy. Bill's whole method is about removing that ambiguity.
So the challenge for everyone listening today is to look at your own reporting. Look at the charts you send out or the charts you receive. Are they just souvenirs?
Are they busy work wearing a tie?
Are you trying to use a flashlight when you really need headlights?
And maybe most importantly, when the smoke alarm goes off, do you just stare at it or do you actually go and check the kitchen?
That seems to be the ultimate takeaway here. We all have access to data. We're practically drowning in it.
But the difference between being a spectator and being a leader isn't what data you have. It's what happens in that moment the report hits your screen.
Stop guessing. Start driving.
Safe travels.
That's it for this deep dive into the philosophy of Bill Rochelle. Thanks for listening.